Sounds good to me.
Terrific.
Quiet group. I was hoping y'all had you're energized and ready to roll.
Well, it's good to see you all here today at our Hudson River Park Advisory Council November 15th, 2023 meeting. It's an hour and a half meeting, virtual only. I would like to have a motion to begin the meeting. Do I have a second? Yes, yes. Great. The meeting has begun. Now it's 7:03 p.m. As explained before, please fill out the attendance form, and we'll be distributing October minutes in December. And we're going to kick off with the Hudson River Park Trust update. And we all should have received a copy of it yesterday.
All right, great. Thank you all. Good to see you, everyone. I know we're starting a little bit later than normal. So I will try to keep it brief. Although despite entering the off season, we are still have a lot of things moving. So first up on the report, everyone should have gotten an email from me. We are collecting suggestions for names for the waste shark. My personal one is Sharky McSharkface, but I'm not sure it's going to make the cut. And so if you can help spread the word, we're collecting names for the next little bit. We will then be selecting some of the top contenders for public vote. So we are all in for the suggestions here. I shared a social media tile as well as some suggested language if folks want to share or have your organizations forward. It's also on our channels already, both Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, etc. If you're able to repost, we'd love some engagement. We've had some really great suggestions already, although I won't spoil when they come out.
You call that a shark vacuum? What exactly are you calling it again?
It is like a robotic waste collector, I think is some of the phrasing they've used. It is like a Roomba, as you have said. A Roomba for the water is another good way that people have explained it. There's a bunch of different ways to try to evoke, depending on the audience. Are you trying to be technical, or are you trying to be evocative so people can understand? But I can re-forward it for you, Tammy, if you want. There's some good language.
If we have extra time at the end of the meeting, we can go out to breakout sessions. We can all brainstorm and come up with group ideas.
To keep moving, so our contractors are finishing up some of the last pieces at Gansevoort. You will maybe seen the Bloomford Street on the north side. I think the paving is all but complete. The dog run should open in the next couple weeks. It is taking a little bit longer with the cold weather. And our rain garden, which is part of our resiliency pieces there to help prevent stormwater runoff, is under planting. You can actually walk by, you can start seeing all the plants going. It's really great. Our on the science play area or science playground downtown, the contractor is doing safety surfacing. We expect that to open the next couple weeks. I'll let everyone know when we have a date to do it. You can come celebrate. Hopefully bring your kids so that everyone can enjoy it. But it is coming along. If you walk by, it is stunning. On October 30th, with Community Board 1, we held a public meeting on the estuarium and the estuarium design. Some of the advisory council members were able to attend. Thank you all for those that were there. This was, the design team was coming back with some of the, now that the basic form, shape, sort of pieces were starting to come together to talk about sort of what the building, how the building is shaping up so far. This involves things like the floodplains and access, and all of those sort of some more technical pieces kind of being combined. They're going to start looking at things like exterior materials and some of the exhibit layouts next. And then we'll start moving into the schematic design phase. We are also there's still some planning to be done about the water intake and outlet. And I don't know, Tammy, do you have anything that you were there, or I don't know if anyone else is on who's there, but do you have anything you want to add?
The only thing that I would say is I'm really delighted to see there was a lot of really thoughtful conversation and dialogue. It was sad to know how limited we are by the underpinning of the utilities and the flood wall, because it does, in all transparency, diminish the size of the building. So it lowers it, but the amount of robust programming that goes on inside should still manage to be great. And the largest feedback that we had was talking about how to integrate it so it is actually, the conversation was about having it interplay and be visible to the water and to the, towards the playground, but not necessarily to the bike path in that direction. And the people in the room, including myself, thought that was an extraordinarily missed opportunity, and that we really do want it to be public facing and loud and proud of the opportunities that we have in the park.
So I know the team is continuing to work on all those pieces, and how to make it that interactive piece is really one that I know they're troubleshooting for. And also really looking at how to make sure that even if folks are, say, not going into the wet lab, but they're able to have that interface and have a usable space sort of regardless, and that some of the exterior pieces as well. So overall, a really great conversation with some of the community members down in Tribeca. Pier 97 is continuing. It is later than we are expected it was. There's been some supply chain issues, some snags with some of the contractors. And I'll let you guys know. I do not have a projected window right now. I'll let you guys know as soon as it is. They are moving forward on the building. I think the structural steel for the building is coming in. I think the turf is down. A bunch of the grass is already down. They're continuing to work on some of the decking and seating and all those smaller pieces that require many pieces to all come together. Individual widgets to come together at once. The pickleball courts, folks have seen, our 34th Street pickleball courts are open. Today is the second full day they are open. They are already quite popular, and we're going to continue to be monitoring and looking at them as we go. Their rules are very similar to our tennis courts rules, in which you can come and use the courts for an hour before we're turning over to the next group, and we're continuing to sort of work with that. We've already heard from some pickleball leagues and other folks who have gone out to use it. So although it's not a permanent space, it is up for grabs and first come, first serve. So hopefully everyone will come join. We tried to play a game. I have a big bruise on my shoulder where I crashed from the net. Not in the park and not our construction, but folks should know Pier 94 up off of Clinton Cove has started construction. They will have some detours on access, I think, on the south side while they do some of the bike rerouting, bikeway and pedestrian improvements as part of their project in front of their property, but where they connect with ours. And then also there may be some disruptions to Clinton Cove. I think that as they do some of the utility works, I think there's like a sewer pipe that cuts through there that they're going to have to get to at some point. So we're working with them on trying to limit the disruption within the park, all those sorts of pieces that go into it, and we'll try to keep people updated as things evolve and change. Moving over to some of our river project stuff, we did our annual estuarine sanctuary management plan update to the board. That really covered a lot of the work we've been doing. You guys have heard a lot about it, so I'm not going to go into all the details. This is our research work. This is our resiliency work. This is our habitat enhancement work. This is some of our access work. All these things that are kind of wrapped up into that plan. We work with the board to go through. We are wrapping up our research kind of peak season on our research and moving into the data kind of crunching stage. So we returned our oyster wraps to the pile field. Those are the ones that we pull up for research and are hanging off docks. Our Tribeca Habitat Enhancement Research Vessel is going out for sort of their last look for the season later this month. And we are working both with our in-house reports and our science team here to start crunching the data we collect and our, I think, 12 plus visiting scientists who've been collecting data and samples and everything else like that over the course of the season. We have our 2 CUNY visiting scholars and Dr. Diane Greenfield and Chester Zarnock, who all of whom have done research in the park, are speaking at our November 30th Ask a Scientist event. If anyone wants to come, you can hear about some of the live research that do it. Ask a Scientist is often quite fun in a light way in which to like sort of engage with some of the science facts as part of it. And it's really a good way to hear about some of the progress we're making towards our research goals. We held release of the fishes. I unfortunately was quite sick, but I heard some of you guys made it. It was one of our great ones, a really fun time. Similar, had some Ask the Scientist pieces. We talked about some of our research and obviously returned our fishes to the water. I think there was over 400 people that came through for it. So a really great time. And we got to talk about some of our, I think, our pathogen testing and sort of the end of the season pathogen testing along with our water quality testing work. So share some of the outcomes of that from this year. We had our first blue team event. Yep.
Are all of those things in the report so I can take minimal notes and then just link it?
Yes.
Thank you.
We had our first blue team event. Blue team is one of our newest initiatives. It is with the Waste Shark, and it is some of our shoreline cleanups and Waste Shark activity at Gansevoort. It is something that we are going to be doing regularly. We're working with friends on some of their volunteer efforts also to do some of those shoreline cleanups there. We have been seeing frankly, actually less trash than we anticipated on some of it, given some of our experiences elsewhere, and maybe the time of year, and maybe the amount of rain and CSO washout. So we're continuing to stay at it, but we are continuing to do it. I will put a ping, and I will ask all of you. We have a fair amount of driftwood that we would like to perhaps hand off if there was an artist or someone who wants to do something with it. I've been meaning to reach out to Westbeth, but if anyone from the advisory council has a good idea on an artist or a studio or someone who may want to help come get some of it, I'm all ears. Shoot me a note. I'd appreciate it. And public programs, our season wrapped up. We did our pumpkin smash event. It was our largest ever, with over 1,700 people who came out. We smashed over 3,000 pounds of pumpkins and gourds for it. It was a really fun time. We had some folks from one of our circus partners who came to really help liven it up. It was a great time up there, and a really good way to help feed our compost. As a reminder, when we collect this time of year, we have a lot of browns, that's leaves and sticks and twigs and other things that really need nitrogen-rich stuff in our compost to help make sure that it is healthy soil. So actually, this time of year, being able to collect all that extra nitrogen above and beyond what we normally collect from our compost bins throughout the park is really a great piece to help make sure that we have our great plantings next year, because all of that compost gets returned into the park. With this, I mentioned as we started, but a lot of folks weren't on. We have started permitting Gansevoort. We expanded the fall permits to include to submit some of the extra hours. Winter season permits are out and in people's hands, which include the first full season there, and obviously we'll continue next year with spring and others on it. We're being able to accommodate a lot more hours with the added field, and we are working to sort of move folks around to make sure we have the right people in the right spots. It's going to be sort of, I think, more soccer on Gansevoort and more baseball at Pier 40. Particularly the fences at Gansevoort can only accommodate a pretty low young group of softball, t-ball players in the way that Pier 40 can accommodate some older ones.
Can I just ask Robert if everybody, that we have a couple leagues represented here? Tom, is everybody up to date on permitting? With Gansevoort, have you heard from Gansevoort and the possibility to permit there? The same thing, Andrew, and I guess Isaac Daniel.
I'm not up to speed on it with GVLL, but that's me. That's not GVLL, so I'll have to check in with them on that.
Isaac Daniel.
Yeah, I know. I'm aware of the permitting. So I think so far so good. Obviously, there's some space limitations for soccer as well for the older kids, and with that, with that field. But yeah, all good.
Terrific. Well, good to hear that the word is getting out.
Oh, word was out. They were at our door well before that.
Well before, but it has gotten out, and it's
permits are out as a piece. And if anyone from the leagues have questions, Kira Boyle, who's been in regular contact with them.
So I imagine you're giving like schools and leagues, local leagues, a priority, and
all of our standard pieces. It is an expansion of our time, and we're able to try to accommodate folks in the insane Tetris that is field, locations, time, sports that go along with it. So from the operations side, Gansevoort Peninsula is there. PEP is regularly up there. So far, operations have been smooth. It's quite popular if anyone's been. So I think we've had some figuring out some of the trash pieces and moving it around, but otherwise has been going well. The Gansevoort Street Crosswalk is open. If anyone has done it, literally the hour after it opened, it was as if it had always been there and was built with the park from day one. People have found their way across it instantaneously. It was really impressive to see, like, something that was clearly so needed happen in a record amount of time. We are our facilities and horticulture teams are deep in the weeds of our fall work. We have miles and miles of pipe and irrigation lines and everything else across the park, and so it is a 6-week-ish process for the whole team to blow out all of our pieces, turn off all the water fountains, turn it off for the irrigation, blow them out, get the de-water, so all those systems work again in the spring. We're in the middle of that process. You may see them; they're out on 46 today. And so it is a huge effort, but one that they are going through right now. We are also, I think, since September 1, we've planted 10 trees, 5,000 shrubs and perennials, and over 26,000 bulbs in the park. So all those beauty that we see year round is our team is out there doing right now, and it keep moving. Thanks to the Advisory Council Safety Committee, November, a suggestion from last year, November is running Safety Month here in Hudson River Park and outside of the park. We are now a participant. We're helping educate folks about those safe running pieces, daylight savings. It's time to change from daylight savings when many people who run in the early evening, who used to run during daylight, were out the rest of the year suddenly running at night. So we're doing education time. You'll see signs out in the park. We do our social media stuff, all of that. We are also looking forward. I did some searching on some other safety months, and I think May is Water Safety Month, and we're starting to think forward for next year's season on how we can also maybe take this idea and kind of carry it forward into some other areas. And we appreciate the pieces of it.
Robert, one of the things that came up was the creation of a maritime committee within the advisory council. And I guess we're going to discuss later today whether we want to just fold that into safety, or does it make more sense to have a smaller group? But do you have if you're going to be looking for insight from our experts here?
Yeah, we were trying to think about how to do some of the education pieces, partnering with some of our boathouses and others on it. So it's an early idea, but certainly one that would be happy to talk to folks about.
Hey, Robert, for the safety of the runners, I do think, as somebody noted in the chat, that we got the email on the running tips. Are you running classes as well, or is it just a social media campaign?
This is just an education campaign. So we have signs out in the park, and we do our social media, our emails, and try to reach people on kind of all our channels. There are any number of running groups and clubs that are in the park all the time, and we're hoping to try to catch some of those.
Might I ask that you share some of that and ask the Battery Park City Authority, who's the neighbor just south of you, to send that out? Because if they're run through the park, eventually they end up coming south. So it might be a nice tag for both ends.
Where they may start down there and enter the park up here. So we know that it is part of a larger running ecosystem in the city. We're just trying to do our part, but I'm happy to forward it over what we've done to Battery Park City. The request may be best received from one of their residents for it, and then use ours as a template. But we work with New York Road Runners on it.
I'm a resident down there, and I'd love for you to contact them and have them lead in a way that you are. It would be lovely. So thank you.
Similarly, after last month's discussion, Chris McGann, from our public safety director, has reached out to the 1st, 6th, and 10th precincts along the park, all of whom have agreed to do some joint bikeway enforcement for this, sort of a joint effort. I don't know exactly when the dates are, and I'm sure they actually won't want to tell us in advance when the dates are going to be. The whole point is to catch folks doing where they are, but we're hoping to do so the joint education and enforcement operations with PEP and the NYPD. We're pushing them, try to get them on the calendars. It is a small piece. We know obviously it's not one, or these targeted ones cannot be frequent. They will not do them that much, and it's a dedication of resources, but certainly a small piece to try to advance it.
Can I ask you a question on that? Is it going to be, if you pull folks over, you're going to educate them, or is it fine-based? What is the goal of it?
I think it's largely education. I think certainly if there's a motorbike on it, it may, like a full-on motorbike, which we certainly see, like there may be there, but the NYPD does this around the city. So we are really kind of just pulling what they already do. Chris, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I think that's it. It would be both. Each precinct has their own area that they'd like to prioritize. The 6th precinct has a different priority, wants to prioritize different concerns than the 10th, but in the end, it'll be both a education and enforcement and just putting everyone out there. I'd hoped to have it started already. Our first 2 dates that we scheduled had to be canceled, once for NYPD, once for us. And it's a bit, the bikeway's quieting down now, but I'm still gonna look to get a couple of those out there so that come April and May in the spring, when it gets busier again, we'll really, you know, start up again and start early in the season. Hopefully it makes a difference.
I mean, I think it's a terrific idea, even if it's targeted, but I do have a kind of question. And if there's a cyclist, an e-bike coming up and someone pulls them over, are they going to ask folks to like get off the greenway and then go to the other side? Because there's no real west side option, I guess. So the idea would be to tell them at that point to get off the greenway, as well as educate them. I'm just wondering about the mechanics of it. If that's been thought about.
We'll have to choose safe locations as to what they want to set up. If they want to have a larger table with more education material. I mean, the 6th precinct was very concerned with the motorbikes on there. So they're probably going to want to have some sort of police truck here that if they find illegal gas, you know, motorbike on there, they're just going to confiscate it there. The 10th precinct was more concerned with education. Enforcement will be part of both of it. Education will be part of both of it. But again, they'll all come with their, you know, each location be slightly different.
Yeah, well, keep us posted, and love to hear the results of that. Kate?
I'm sure when we do it, we're gonna put it on social media and make sure that, you know, word gets out that people, you know, we don't want it to be a surprise. We want people to know that we're doing it.
Katie Barnera?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, if you could get a little closer to your mic, but I can hear you, yes.
Okay. I'm just a little concerned that if they ask them to leave the bikeway, that they don't come over onto the sidewalk on West Street, which is which they often do and is very treacherous for the pedestrians. So, does Chris have any handle on how we can prevent that from happening?
Yeah, they've done it before. Usually what we'll do is we'll set something up to kind of slow people and funnel them through, and then someone that we're concerned with, that, you know, whether the operation of their bike, lack of a helmet, whatever it is, we'll have a safe spot to decide that we'll ask them to, you know, go over there where we could talk to them further. But NYPD's done it before. We've done it before. Obviously, we're not gonna, the locations we'll pick will be, you know, maybe by Pier 40, right, coming southbound, we'll stop them before they get there. And we have areas that we can pull them into the Pier 40 entrance and address whatever we have to. Probably the north side of Chelsea Piers will give us a little area there. We could set up there. You know, something, they'll probably have a tent and table inside the park there that's visible from the bikeway, and a couple of cones. Usually it's the same way with vehicles. You'll try to filter them and slow them down.
Sally? I'm just going to share a picture of a motorbike that, you know, I was just taking pictures. Gas powered, you know, you see them all over the place. They stop at Gansevoort. I shared this with Robert, as well as some skateboard photos of some tables that would gotten dinged by skateboarders in the first week. Yeah. But yeah, it's you have your hands full, and these are the types of bikes I imagine that we'd say leave right away.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if they're vehicles that require to be registered under New York State, that, you know, they may take them there and bring them to the police precinct until they're properly registered before they release them. I know I saw on the agenda about the skateboarders. I was kind of surprised. Since Gansevoort's opened, we've been able to have PEP officers up there 7 days a week, 2 shifts a day, stationed just for Gansevoort. We've had the manpower. Will be sustainable forever. I don't know. We'll see. But things do happen quick. I saw a video of a piano that came in there to play, and I was like shocked. And sure enough, it came in on wheels. Apparently he's known throughout the village. He shows up. He came in on wheels. Pep was on him within 12 minutes, I think. He was out, but he came in within 60 seconds. It doesn't take long. The same as a skateboard will come right in, you know. They're up there both shifts, but obviously they're not in every part, and they do have lunch hours and, restroom breaks and so forth.
Just so that sharing with the advisory council, just this was on Saturday last week, and they just filmed their stunts. And as you can see, the skates land, and eventually the tables will be all dinged.
Yeah.
But thank you for listening to me, Robert, and passing it along. I appreciate it.
The skateboarders are a problem in frankly all of our spaces. You'll see on the tables there, they have some of the skateboard stops on some of the on the benches to try to deteriorate. You'll also see, and actually these are a great one, the pathways, say like 13th Avenue, you'll see if you are walking along it, or it's actually much smoother. Areas like under these tables, or as you approach the lounge chairs on 13th Avenue, the texture actually changes, is much rougher, and it is a subtle but gentle sort of deterrent, because it actually is uneven on part of for skateboards, and it was part of the design, was to try to make it more discouraging, less comfortable for it, without being true hostile architecture.
I'm sorry, you've been very patient, Sally. Go ahead.
That's okay, fine. I just wanted to join the conversation on stopping the mopeds and the motorcycles and the e-bikes on the bikeway. I wish I had my camera out half the time when they were, gunning me down. So apparently this is something that you've implemented before. I'm curious about what happens at the point of contact. You mentioned that the precincts might have a truck to confiscate some of the bikes. Will there be any fining? Has there been any fining of this? That was a real concern. They're just going to go over to the West Side Street and ride on the sidewalks. What's the longevity of this activity? It lasts a couple of hours, and then what happens? Everybody goes away and the bad behavior continues. So I just wanted to get the full understanding of what will happen. I gather some bikes will be confiscated, particularly the motorcycles or mopeds, but will people be ticketed and fined as well?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Depending on, what the issue is. Again, they like to, for minor offenses, they like to just warn them and educate them and try to get voluntary compliance. And then some of the more egregious things, they'll be issued summonses, and some of the more dangerous things, like a gas-powered vehicle let's say you have a gas-powered scooter or motorcycle on the bikeway. If it has license plates and registered, you'll end up getting summonses for riding it there. If it's not not registered, it'll probably be vouched at a police precinct until you provide proper documentation for it. Each time, each precinct will be different. And yeah, it'll only be for, a couple hours, and then we'll try to get it going as often as we can along the bikeway. But if on our end, if we can stagger them somewhere between the 1st precinct, the 6th precinct, and 10th precinct, and it'll give people a little pause. It's not a permanent solution. It's just one thing we can do.
Just so you're paying attention, just letting them know you're paying attention.
Right. It's a little something, and yeah, they will. Obviously, if we're here, they may go into the streets or elsewhere, but
we are going to be hearing a first step legislation that Brad Hoylman Siegel has introduced. We're not going to. It's going to be more informative, but just to say that yes, our local electeds understand this is an issue, and it's going to take a while, and it's going to be multiple steps. But we're going to get to that after we talk about a couple more things with the trust. But I see that Michael, you had your hand raised.
No, I think I see the floor. I just want to make sure I say out loud that there's a lot of attention paid to safety, and of course, safety is a priority. Everyone's safety is a priority. I'm really grateful to Chris McGann's and Robert's approach, to the trust's approach to this in terms of education. I think we should always lean toward education and grace. I'll give you one statistic, and then I'll just get off the line. 90% of the tickets in 2022 that were issued for people riding a bike on the sidewalk, for instance, were delivered to people of color. So we're talking about people who are trying to make a living, some of these people, deliveristas. We're talking about Black and brown people who are trying to make a living. We are concerned with the quality of life, and our conversation should be about this, a little bit about education and rural education and enforcement, because that's necessary and important. But as the advisory council and as in support of the trust, and as people who have great connections, I think what Daniel is talking about is where we should put most of our attention, which is leaning on our electeds, leaning on the people in government whose responsibility is to solve this problem for us in a larger sense, because this is not just an isolated problem for Hudson River Park. It's a conversation about what kind of transportation system and networks and culture we want in New York City. And things are changing because of technology, and we're suffering for it. And that always happens when you have technological advancements. And so it's just a bumpy time. But everyone should realize when you're talking about enforcement and vouchering stuff and taking people's bicycles away, you're talking about impacting human beings' ability to make a living. And so every time you do it, I think we should have more care, and we should think about it's a balance between the needs of this local community and the needs of everyone in New York City, especially people who make less money than most of the people on this call.
And thank you, Michael, for highlighting it. I will say, we know all these folks are park users too, and we do want the park to be a welcoming place. Personally, I noticed there was a number of bicycles with the hand muffs taped onto it, which are our delivery ones that were in our courtyard tunnel. And I noticed there was a pattern every around 2 p.m. before the evening dinner rush, a little after the lunch rush. They were all here, and I looked around, and actually there was a group of delivery guys who very clearly with it all, who came on a regular basis to use our rooftop field as part of our open field hours and play soccer here, which is exactly what the park was designed to be used for. So they definitely, all these folks are part of our park community. We do have safety concerns, particularly about e-bikes on the bikeway, and it's a piece that we are doing. It is certainly, as you said, what's happening here on the bikeway immediately adjacent to the park is a symptom of a much larger issue across the city. We are one very small run out of many, many, many miles of roadway and bikeways in New York City. So thank you for that.
And Michael, I just wanted to second it. I think we all are in agreement, most of us. And just want to let you know that in our CV2 traffic and transportation resolution, we called that out. We want to make sure that
I'm aware of that.
It's not punitive, it's educational. Yes.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Robert. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, Mary, and then Tom.
I just want to follow up on that by saying that for anyone who doesn't remember, first of all, the bikeway is not part of the park. We've struggled with the jurisdictional issues for quite a while. Of course, every entrance to the park crosses the bikeway, so it's a very significant safety issue, but I think that's part of the balancing act. The PEP officers don't have jurisdiction there. And because of Chris's past experience with NYPD, he has a relationship with them. He's been working really hard to invite the precincts to be involved. And I wanted to applaud that. And I was waiting until we did the safety committee report, but also applaud the running safety efforts and the bike safety efforts. They've been holding classes in the park in this past summer, and they're planning to do it again and tie into those themed months too, to help bring attention to it. And I think that that's a really good thing that we have worked together on to make happen. So thank you.
Tom, you had your hand up, and then Albert.
It was regarding something else. I just wanted to know, Robert, if the Meet the Scientist is online, so people could see it, like myself. We'll be able to go meet the scientists. I don't think
we've recorded them there because they're usually in person. For a bunch of them, particularly 57, we've had some donated drinks to go along with it, but I don't think we have recorded it.
Okay.
But I certainly will suggest that to the team as something, particularly in the spaces where we can.
Thanks.
Albert. Yep, now we can hear you.
No, did you call me?
You have your hand up.
Yes, I did. I didn't know I was being called.
Yes.
This is more along the lines of what I think Tom was getting at. In an earlier part of the report, there's wonderful things about all the research that's being done and the statistics on the number of scientists and everything else. But if there are any papers or reports that are being done about a little bit in layman terms about what we're learning and what we're trying to learn and our successes and failures, it would be very interesting to be able to share that with our constituencies so that they know more about, what is happening there on a real education, and developmental basis. Thank you.
Definitely. And earlier this year, I actually at the beginning of the season had done a whole report up on all the various research that we had going on that were in part of the season that we might be able to pull up for you. All of our reports and all of our data actually lives on our website. We do share it. We're part of a much larger sort of city and regional scientist coordination. The digestible version, that is what we give here. I will definitely try to bring, once we do some of our data crunching to one of the upcoming meetings, I'll probably want to have our scientists come and talk a little bit about what we have from this year, and that will have a digestible version of what that report will be.
Thank you. This is very interesting.
Okay. If we're done, I'm going to keep moving. I do have a couple other safety incidents that I just wanted to make sure share with some folks. You may have read in the newspaper on October 27th, we had a swimmer who had to be rescued from one of our storm drains. It was a man who apparently went for a midnight swim in his underwear. Our water quality is not the only safety risk when it comes with swimming in the Hudson River waters. He was washed into a storm drain, and there was a passerby who heard him. He had apparently been in there under a manhole for several hours. And you'll see there's a video of someone walking by it, turning around, popping up after listening to the manhole, calling 911. They arrive a few minutes later, take off the lid to it, and pluck a whole human right out of the storm drain. So it just one of those ones when we talk about swimming in the park, it is the water quality is not the only safety concern that goes along with it. I will say midnight swimming is probably in your underwear in New York City is probably not a great idea to begin with, but I just want to flag that one. We similarly, or continuing on, PEP actually was able to help the NYPD identify 2 folks who had been stealing bags, throwing life rings in the water this year. They actually returned. PEP was able to recognize them based on our camera footage and detain them until NYPD was able to, or one of them until NYPD was able to arrive. Just really part of that system of cameras being able to help support sort of enforcement after the fact. And they're not preventative, but they are able to help support those things. And PEP, in a feel-good story, PEP was actually also able to help, along with DoFund and a park patron, help save a dog that had gotten into the water up by Pier 62, and they threw a life ring. We're able to bring it in. I will say it is. I will use this one as a reminder to say it is really important. Our leash rules are for a reason. The park is skinny. There is the water. I have personally stopped 2 dogs at this point from running out of the park and across the bikeway and into a crosswalk where they would have entered the Route 9A. So our leash rules are for a reason. We do have our dog parks. We have 4. We're about to add a 5th. So it is for real reasons that we have these. We also this fall, I don't think I've gotten a chance to share this before. This fall we actually started. We have an educational brochure on our dog rules that we've given our HORT team and our PEP officers are out as part of when they are approaching folks who are breaking them. So when they have dogs or off leash or that are on our lawns or are urinating in our plant beds, all of which that damage the flowers, creates unsanitary conditions on our lawns, or is really quite a safety risk for the dog or that dog, other dogs, other park users when they're off leash. So we are continuing as part of that education campaign piece. And we actually have a new brochure as part of it we've been handing out. We're in the process of updating it to include Gansevoort as one of the locations that dogs can be off leash. And if you guys we're looking for other ways, creative ways to do that messaging. So if you have other good thoughts on puns or fun ways that we can do it, I think we're trying to do something early next spring, right before sort of our lawns turn and folks are really back out them. Those April days are really where a lot of dogs have been out over winter and new people are coming up from the lawns the first time and
I have a question for you on that, and that's again enforcement. Years ago, it used to be very expensive. You'd get a ticket for your dog, let's say, peeing on some of the grass. So is this still more educational and not punitive as well? Those tickets were $200. Someone who
it is. It is more educational. Particularly, one of the things we found, this was a suggestion actually came from our horticulture team. They're often out in our plant beds. Dogs will run into what is their workspace. do their business, people will leave it. And so it was actually a piece from our Hort team asked for support to be able to help them educate folks about it, because when they approached people to talk to them about it, they often got quite negative reactions. So we wanted to have something that they could pass off that was a little bit more illustrative about the problems.
I have a question for you on that. Have you taken a look at the idea for dog waste compost?
So our compost doesn't support, I do not believe, waste as part of it, and the volume that I think we would attract is extraordinary.
Yes, but there is a program out there about it in the city, which is why I was asking. So
I will definitely talk. I will talk to our cohort team and compost team about it. Certainly, what I will never ask them to do is sort through it to pluck out the plastic bags in which it's wrapped in.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Having done our waste audit and unpacked a diaper around a plastic bottle as part of our annual waste audit, which is one of our research pieces we go, I will never ask someone to do that. It was one that had come the day before from, I think it was a Pier 62 diaper. And the following day, having it sat outside, I helped sort the unsorted trash from a recycling.
I hope the folks that we don't see on camera are not eating right now, but Tom,
I was just going to say, I've been involved in composting ages ago, and dogs are carnivores. So it introduces a different set of bacteria, parasites, etc., into the waste chain that are more common in carnivores than in herbivores or in vegetables. That's it.
Yeah, I think some of the commercial facilities that operate with heated compost, which is how the city does a lot of it, are a little bit more able to accommodate than ours, which only has an auger and sort of the natural heat for it. But certainly something I'll pass along and see what we can do.
It's my thought process was to have the city put one on the other side of the street.
Fair enough. My final one is just an update. We've talked before on the Pier 76 Task Force. We actually had our final meeting at 8:30 this morning. Today is a double header for me, really all day affair. We are moving our way through. The task force has been a really collaborative process. We've looked at this point, the most recently sort of a wide range of potential revenue generating uses, including some of the opportunities and constraints that go along with them with our facilitators. We aren't making any decisions as part of it, but we are generating a really useful set of information that we can bring out to a broader community, including the advisory council, for further discussion. It is really helping us pull a lot of that together and put it in an accessible and digestible form to the extent that volume of information can be. I don't know if folks who are Daniel or other folks here who are part.
Yeah, I was going to introduce it as kind of a topic, but we might as well talk about it now. I'm sure there's some advisory council members who might have some questions, but as you know, we had a half a dozen or more meetings. It was in person usually at Pier 57. It also was virtual. It began in the spring. It concluded today. What I got out of it as kind of a online listener was the trust HR&A and James Cornerfield operations were looking for community input. What wouldn't the community accept? One of the things that they wouldn't accept was parking. And then also the experts believed that they didn't think housing was possible due to the high cost of building over the water and also the affordability of the developer being able to put in affordable housing. So it just didn't seem like it was going to be a good match, but there are so many others and we didn't get into any details. No designs were discussed, just kind of the process for us to understand why the trust was approaching things with their experts the way they were, whether air rights could come into play, whether because the sites are so limited within the act, maybe going a little deeper into Manhattan, there are many more sites that would attract more competition because it doesn't make sense to do it if you're not going to get the proper funding back from selling air rights. And I was very happy with it. Tammy, I know I'm just skimming the surface, but you want to add some?
I think it's, it's a super complicated problem. It's one of the largest piers that the trust has. So there's lots of desire for lots of things, and the real devil is in the details of how to get it funded. Clearly we heard lots and lots of definitions and desire for public open space, and what that looks like and how it could be combined. Sorry, somebody's drilling above me. There's no easy answers, and I think the best answer is going to be compromise. Because as we were all sitting there this morning and somebody commented, maybe it was Jeffrey, I think, who, jokingly said, as I leave here with my bagel, please understand and remember that those lovely little things in the water are eating away at the pilings on the pier. So, we have to do something. We have to try and, figure this out. But there's a lot of concerns of how expensive that is going to be to get it done. And what are the compromises and choices that need to be made to get there?
Isaac Daniel also represented the AC. Isaac Daniel, you have some notes on what was discussed?
Yeah, I would just say that it was a great beginning to the process, and it continues in the transparent workings of the trust. So I think that was all positive, but there's a lot to do and many years ahead to find the right solutions and the right funding.
So I don't want to get too far into it. We're still compiling a lot of what with the trust heard as part of this, and then we'll be working to try to share a lot more of this information and engage a lot of folks on it in a wider way. I'm not going to be able to answer all these questions now. We're trying to work to pull it together so that we can help roll it out as part of a bigger piece with folks for discussion. Again, no decisions really have been made. It really was a deep weighing of, as I think Tammy says, and Daniel and Isaac, a weighing of a lot of pros, a lot of cons, in trying to get folks starting to think about some of those details. It is going to be a challenge.
But I will say it was probably one of the most collaborative processes I've ever been through. And that says a lot for being a chair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tom?
Yeah, just quickly, I think if there were air rights involved and they looked at moving them further into the city, that would be a good thing for the park because it would reduce the impact of the increased density on the park itself by shuffling it over a little closer to like Central Park or somewhere. Okay.
Any other
last
questions?
Item.
So Robert, what is the next stage now? What happens next? I know you're going to see CB4 and you're going to talk about specifics with CB4.
Yeah, so I think we are pulling together a lot of strands, a lot of information. We're trying to put together some of the documents that will help share that information and carry some of what we've learned and developed as a group forward. And I'm not sure exactly what form the next stage of it is. It's going to have to be a larger conversation, and we have to do some thinking on how to get the volume of information, as I'm sure Daniel, you and Tammy and Isaac Daniel all know, the volume of information and considerations into a way that is people accessible is going to be a little bit of an effort. But we're going to talk to some CB4 in particular about some of those next steps on it. We'll certainly make sure that the advisory council is also included as part of whatever comes up next. And I will say, I have one thing that I did want to flag for folks, and it might be a transition to one of our other items, upcoming on November 30th. And I think Tammy may have sent some information around this, upcoming on November 30th, 4:30 to 8:30. The Battery Park City is doing a design progress update meeting for it, and it's at Stuyvesant High School. And I don't know, Tammy, do you have a flyer that I thought you sent something around, but I can't remember.
I can share another flyer. I got one today that I can share and post, which I will do so with the minutes. Actually, I'll share it beforehand. They're supposed to be presenting at the Environmental Protection Committee of CB1 on January 20th. the area around the trust, which they call Reach 1, which goes from North Moore down through Chambers, down West Street to the back of Stuyvesant, all the way to the water. So that's 1 and 2. They're supposed to present on their new change designs in the Environmental Protection Committee on 11/20, and then holistically the entire plan on the 30th. I'm not sure yet what the layout. I did give them feedback saying that I thought 3.5 hours of a meeting was a wee bit long for the 30th, and perhaps they could cut it into digestible bites or do more than one. So I'm waiting to hear back from them on that. But I'm happy to share. The first one would be a WebEx opportunity that you can go and see with Community Board 1 for their Environmental Protection Committee on November 20th. And the second opportunity would be November 30th, which will be held at Stuyvesant High School in the cafeteria in person.
Sorry, is there a time for those yet?
Community Board 1 is 6 to 8, and the Battery Park City Authority 1 is 4:30 to 8.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the crucial thing, Tammy, is that the wall is not going to go up the median. It's going to cross before it gets to the park, and then it's going to go up. It's being recommended to go up on the east side of the block.
I haven't seen the plans, so that's something that's super, super important. We did see a drainage proposal, which would be on the east side of Stuyvesant, so that area where the city bikes are, by where the bridge comes over. In that open space, there needs to do a head house, for lack of a better expression, that will be able to work on drainage and connect to the existing sewer pipes. I'm not sure if that's HRP space or not on the side there. It's between the back of Stuyvesant, that edge of where that corner is, down to Chambers Street. But north of there is where they're going to look to run the alignment from the back of Stuyvesant across West Street. I don't know if that means to the median at West Street or to the full east side over at BMCC at that point, but that's the point they're looking to cross, which technically, when you look, it's north of actual Chambers Street, at the bottom of where kind of the Esplanade intersects with the back of Stuyvesant, if that makes sense to people.
Robert, where does the park start exactly on the southern border?
It's that line. So where the bulkhead, where it comes across and it forms that corner, it is that line at this point. We used to run further. There used to be a leg that goes further in 2013 that was moved over to Battery Park City.
I got you. So that lawn to the east of Stuyvesant is not
correct.
Up to the park. Okay.
So then the only questions remain that we have not seen anything yet is what kind of build out they're looking to do in the back of Stuyvesant that goes out onto the water where the moorings is, and that is all HRP. Because my understanding, Robert, is that the land for HRP ends at the edge of the Esplanade. So everything in the water.
Yeah. Yes, the water is all ours.
Yeah. So that is a question that needs to be looked at and presented.
And platforming over the water in an estuarine sanctuary is particularly tricky to do.
I think, yeah. So Robert, where does the trust stand in its working? And the last letter that we knew about was over the summer. Has there been any other correspondence?
I'm trying to think about, we haven't done anything since I think this most recent update, which is the new design change. I think we have kind of heard about some of those pieces. I know that they're talking to it. I think it is perhaps responsive to some of our previous comments that we've given them about some of these operational issues and other things that we had. And I think we are currently sort of continuing to try to engage with them on those other pieces. Tom is right. The platforming over the estuarine sanctuary is certainly something we have raised with them that has yet to be resolved. So it is an ongoing conversation.
Mary?
Well, isn't there also a legal issue regarding alienation of parkland? I mean, they can't take parkland without replacing it, right?
Unfortunately, Hudson River Park is not map parkland.
Alienation, yeah, we are different from the alienation pieces of it.
Okay, thank you.
But we have we have said, and we were continuing to them before, we have said that we believe our legal counsel in at least an initial version of it, believed it was likely there's a good chance it would actually require a change in the act. We'd have to change our borders with Battery Park City. But that still is an ongoing conversation.
And DEC would be a primary player because of the estuarine sanctuary and the designation. On the
DEC,
state level.
Army Corps,
Yeah.
like perhaps EPA. There is a lot of regulation that goes into this that is beyond our property rights.
And
just wanted to call out that Tracy Jackson is the Chief of Staff for Assemblymember Glick, says they've repeatedly raised concerns with the BPCA about this area several times. So our electeds are also with our sentiments here.
The only concern and conversation I would have is I do know that Battery Park City Authority has to be working with all those alphabet agencies anyway, and they are. So it's not as if it's going to be a heavier lift for them. They're quite frankly right now, their project is at 30% design. So the meeting that they're hosting on the 30th is what they call the post 30% design meeting, even though we didn't get to review the 30% design for 1, 2, and 5 because they didn't have the engineering available for it. It's all being bundled into their post. So, I mean, I don't even know what to say at that point.
Well, I think everyone deserves credit. Tammy for Clarion Call. We pushed the wolf from the door. We pushed him across the street. I think we all deserve a pat on the back.
Tracy, I see that you've got on camera. Do you have more that you can add? Give us some background.
Hi, I actually have a ton of noise in my house right now and some technical issues happening, so I apologize. My internet is spotty elsewhere. Anyway, the only thing I would add is that Deborah did a walkthrough, one of the walkthroughs a few weeks ago with Battery Park City to look at the proposed platform area. And one thing that she also kept emphasizing is that flooding also comes from rain, not just a rise in water, but water falling from the sky. And the engineers seemed to say, well, we'll take that into consideration, but it wasn't really part of the plans that we've seen so far. So anyway, Deborah is raising that with them repeatedly.
Great. Well, thank you, Tracy. Appreciate the work on that. Any other questions regarding this, the BPCA resiliency? We know that there's going to be more information coming over the months, I guess, between now and end of January.
And the one thing I would encourage everybody who's interested is please sign up to get to their Northwest Resiliency to see what's going on, because the outreach is, if you're not signed up, it'll be hard to know what's happening.
They're pretty good about it. It's like once a week they give you an update almost, right? It's quite often.
Daniel, apologies because I know I missed a meeting this last fall, but did we as the CAC ever send that letter to BPCA after their presentation?
We definitely did. Yes, we did. The trust sent it out day after our meeting.
Oh, great.
It should be published on the site, and if it's not, I'm pretty sure we asked for it to be. I think they've done
It is.
Yeah, Robert and Ted have been really responsive in getting our letters up there. So yeah.
Tammy, could you forward a link to that to get notices? Because I'd love to get notices regularly.
Yeah, I'll try to remember to forward it to you too, Tom.
Thanks.
Yeah,
I could put it in the chat.
Yep, I'll find it.
Okay, so Robert, does that conclude the Hudson River Park Trust report? Any other questions about, because we kind of sped over early on, any other questions of what Robert touched on earlier on? Okay, so we have Carolyn with us from Senator Brad Hoyland Siegel's office. And it's going to be another e-bike discussion, but it's really informational. Carolyn and Sam Vasquez, who also works in Brad's office, came to Community Board 2 and introduced 4 pieces of legislation, all that begin to address bike safety, e-bike safety, registration and putting it on the apps that hire them to, from what I understand, and Carolyn's going to go into detail, to try to make sure folks are registered and licensed, but this is a very beginning step. It's not setting the boundaries. It's very high level. And Carolyn, this hasn't been passed yet, right? This is just in front. This is not something that we're going to be writing a resolution on. It's just something that I thought, because it's really outside our purview, because it's about really bikes inland, not on the Greenway. So Carolyn, why don't you go ahead and just describe the 4 different pieces of legislation, if you could. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dan. Hi, everyone. Sam was sorry he couldn't be here, and he's truly the expert, but I'll do my best to answer any questions. As Dan mentioned, there are 4 bills that Senator Hoylman-Sigal has introduced to try to address this complicated problem of e-bikes, mopeds, and safety concerns. So the first bill, I'm just going to run through them and then maybe provide a little bit more context. The first one would require the registration and licensure of e-bikes and scooters used for commercial purposes, and it would require delivery platforms to pay for any violations. So I think a lot of the issues that we're seeing come from pressure that the delivery platforms are putting on deliveristas, but we'll get into that in a second. The second one is requiring moped registration at the point of sales, so that dealers are responsible for registering mopeds and motorcycles, which will help reduce the number of unlicensed and unregistered vehicles on our streets. The third one is to require liability insurance for delivery people, which would force companies like DoorDash and Uber Eats to take responsibility and ensure those injured have adequate recourse for their injuries. The fourth one is to increase penalties for e-bike and scooter hit and runs to be the same as leaving the scene of a car crash, which should help incentivize operators not to flee after a collision. So those are the 4 bills, and I think just to frame where these came from, even though I'm pretty sure we've gotten to it on this meeting and a lot of meetings before this, and many of you have probably heard about these bills already in one way, shape, or form. But we focused on commercial and delivery specifically, because obviously this is where a huge source of the issues that we're looking at come from. So in late 2021 alone, we found a number. There were over 30.3 million delivery orders in New York City. I think that was just in the last 3 months of 2021. And as we know, during the pandemic, we were incredibly grateful for the delivery workers who came out and delivered whatever we needed. But now we're trying to address the safety concerns that have come out of the apps where those deliveristas are associated. They don't work because they're contractors, but and the pressures that they're putting on them to ride essentially unsafely. So that's sort of where some of these bills come from. And I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Does anyone have any questions? We asked lots of questions when we heard it from CB2. So it's in a resolution that we're going to be presenting at our full board tomorrow. And
thank you for that. We're really grateful.
Right. The only thing that CB2 added was, once again, on the lines of what Michael and I were talking about, is that a lot of the folks who are riding e-bikes and working for the delivery apps are immigrants, recent immigrants, and they rely on these funds in order to live. And we want to make sure that we're not denying them an opportunity to make a living. So we're sensitive to that.
Absolutely. And we are also, and we're meeting with the deliveristas. I don't recall the name of the group off the top of my head, but we are in touch with them, and it is really important. We're trying as much as we can to put the onus on the apps that are sort of motivating some of this behavior. So the app sort of incentivized some of this dangerous riding. For example, when deliveryistas don't take longer trips, they're not given as many trips. And how do you take a longer trip? You need a more powerful way of getting from point A to point B. So they kind of motivate people, they encourage people to get like gas-powered mopeds. And you know, some people might ask, well, why wouldn't they just get e-bikes? But because of all the fires that we've heard about from the batteries, I think that they're being encouraged more and more to get the gas-powered mopeds. That's not the only reason, but that's a big one.
Emily, do you mind just from the perspective of transportation alternatives? I know I'm calling you on the spot, but what are the concerns? I know that you have concerns or transportation alternatives has a point of view, and I'd love it if you could, you know, just high level. We're not going to be writing a resolution on it, but what is the transportation alternatives point of view? And you also wrote in the chat that it's Los Deliveristas Unidos and Workers Justice Project, right? That are the ones that is being picked up.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline, for sharing. I definitely say from TA's perspective, we agree and align on a lot of the points this bill makes. And I think everyone kind of looking at this issue and thinking about where e-bikes fit into this and like incentivizing safety for delivery workers who are our most vulnerable workforce right now in the city. I know we're all kind of coming from like the place of wanting streets to be safer for everyone. So transportation alternatives, we really love the point of sale registration. That is Bill 7703. And that is for mopeds. So that is sort of cutting out a loophole that makes it easier for unregistered mopeds to be sold, because a lot of delivery workers go in like in good faith, believing that they're buying registered licensed vehicles, and then they're not. And then to have those dangerous unlicensed registered mopeds on the road becomes a huge liability issue for them and for everyone. So we're very in support of that. I think some of the hesitation about the other bills you mentioned just comes down into that, like, how much are we punishing delivery workers for their working conditions, rather than going for the apps and targeting them, like where they're making these decisions and choices. When the city attempted to implement something similar about a decade ago, it ended up being that delivery workers were the ones held accountable, not restaurants, or not. I think that the bill was about like getting bike delivery workers and restaurants to be held accountable for like hazardous driving. So we just want to be careful with any frame that adds further burden without actually solving that safety concern. But we think like especially going for these loopholes in regulation for mopeds is a really strong stance to take. And I know Los Deliveristas Unidos agrees there with you, but I'm really glad you're meeting with them. I think maybe they can come here and share what they're up to in the city with you all down the road as these bills come out in the future. And I always have to say this, and I just want to make it clear for everybody, and then I'll take up less of everyone's time. But what I do like about your approach, Caroline, at your office is differentiating between e-bikes and mopeds. And I think that's where the Holden bill really becomes a dangerous bill. We can't conflate these modes. We have to treat them differently. We actually do want delivery workers safely using e-bikes. That is much safer, much less of a burden on our streets, much less of a danger to pedestrians than having all of these unregulated, unlicensed mopeds. So we have to think about this comprehensively from the top at what these app companies are forcing these delivery workers who are very vulnerable to do to make a living, and thinking about actually the tools and technology we have to redesign our streets to make room for everyone to use their street safely and to conduct their work safely. So that's all I'll say tonight. And I did put together a little document just giving lots of info on many corners and angles of all of this that I hope can help people. And I'm always here I'll put my email in the chat if you all have any questions for me.
Emily, it would be terrific if you could
Mhm.
reach out to the Workers' Justice Project and
Yeah.
the Aristas Unidos, and maybe in the beginning of the year, either in January or February, ask them if it's possible, if we could take up 20 minutes of their time and they could come in and talk about, in relationship to Hudson River Park Greenway, and why it's such an important avenue to them and what they're doing,
Definitely.
and maybe some recommendations on how we can work together.
I'd love that. I absolutely will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I just want to say, I just want to reinforce what you said, Emily, that making sure that we're addressing everyone's needs, not just, people who might have safety concerns, but also the deliveristas who are trying to make a living. We're really trying our best not to put the burden on them, but to try to keep everybody safe and protected by trying to shift some of the burden onto the app companies that incentivize them to do some of these unsafe things and have them take the responsibility when those unsafe things happen.
Tammy, I saw that you had your hand raised. Tammy?
I'm going to wait until they come and talk to us because it's a very nuanced problem. I think the way the city tried to go after it had to do with the restaurants. The restaurants don't employ all the time. It's the apps that do, which make it very, very difficult because you don't want to punish a restaurant who is actually not in control of the delivery. This is not as simple as it used to be where everybody worked for the restaurant and it was great. There's also a lot of there's a lot of detail and a lot of nuance, and you have to just make sure that we're also thinking of the future, right? And at some point, we will get to a mass where if you're driving in Brooklyn at the moment, a lot of places, the bicyclists are on the street with the cars. But there are so many bicyclists on the street that actually it's come to a nuance where the traffic moves fairly slowly and safely because everybody's sharing the same space. At some point, with the rise of workers, we will have, if it's done right, enough mopeds and motorcycles on the street. In an ideal world, then everybody plays nicely together in the pool. Because we didn't do special, when motorcycles first came out, we didn't do special roads or highways for them. They shared with the regular roads. And so the question I guess I would always ask is, where are we at the tipping point in the city that we can all just play along together nicely?
Yeah. During our traffic and transportation meeting, we showed a film from 1906 that was taken the day before San Francisco had a big earthquake. And you just see this camera on a trolley, and there's all the horses and carriages and cycles and cars are all like going all over the place. There's no rhyme or reason to it because there weren't any rules set yet, and they had to share the road. And that's, you kind of see that right now. We have to figure it out, and we're at that breaking point. I want to give the floor over to Mary before we run out of time here. We got 14 minutes left. We've kind of covered a lot of things in the agenda already, but Mary, why don't you talk a little bit more about what we didn't talk about early on when Rob was giving the trust report about your meeting at the safety committee, and then maybe also your ideas or what we're considering for the maritime committee as well, considering that, springtime might be a time to put out boating rules and safety precautions. The floor is yours.
And I have to remember to unmute. There we go. We've covered quite a bit of it because we had, again, talked a lot about bike safety. And I did want to pick up on the term comprehensive. I think there has to be comprehensive coordination of some sort because I think we're focusing on the delivery bikes at the moment, which are very important because they're moving faster than other bikes and they're heavier. And but we're also opening the city up to more and more e-bikes. City Bike is expanding. Revel is taking their scooters away, which is good. But as I heard one commentator say, at least Revel required people to wear helmets. And if you rent an e-bike from City Bike, you're not going to be wearing a helmet. So there's just a lot going on. We're having exist in this larger environment. I think we've touched quite a bit on that already, but I think there really does have to be real effort on the city's part to try to coordinate it all, and not just expand one thing at loss of safety in another area. We did talk about finding ways to involve people outside the committee. One thing Dan suggested, we often throw our meetings together kind of last minute, but it's usually about 2 weeks before the AC meeting, once we know that's happening. And so Dan suggested that I just get Ted Schenk to send out a notice once we've scheduled it. So I'll just say that. But also, if you really are interested in safety and you want to be involved with us, I can just put you on the mailing list. We're not too formal about it. I've got several people who expressed interest, haven't been to a meeting in a while, and that's okay. When you see something that you really want to be involved in, you can step in. So we'll work at doing that in the future. And then we at the executive committee, we got talking about the recent webinar on the SS United States, and there have been a couple of other things that have come up that are specific to in-water activities, not always directly related to safety, but the safety committee had taken on working on better kayaking rules for Gansevoort. And so it was thrown out there, first of all, that maybe we need a maritime committee of some sort with people who are expert in those in-water activities. I'm going to use that term to be comprehensive. But a lot of those people are already on the safety committee. Should we have two committees? Should we, are they related enough to just make it one? And I don't know that I have a strong opinion, although I kind of hesitate to be on two committees for time reasons, but I think it should be a discussion for the larger group. And we can talk a little about the SS United States if you want to.
Maybe it just comes down to, putting it on the agenda where we're talking specifically at that meeting about, maritime issues, so that we can get, folks like Graham, who are very knowledgeable, and of course, Tom and other who goes to a lot of the meetings as it is. Rob, I think also. I mean, there are plenty of people here that know a lot about boating and safety. That would be terrific to do a special meeting where we get together before the spring and make recommendations. But Robert, you were also saying you're going to be reaching out to people separately. So is this going to be redundant?
Well, we were just planning our own, try to work with some folks on our own little safety campaign, and doing, like, we reach out to New York Road Runners for our runner safety tips as sort of experts. We also were wondering about maybe trying to do some videos on some of the other pieces, or having folks in it. So I don't think it's kind of the same. Mm-hmm. But and I'm also, the question is always like, would a committee actually have enough frequency to do it, or is it or maybe perhaps a more ad hoc thing? I'm not sure, but we are happy to talk to folks if folks want to have some more conversations about various pieces.
Right. In order for us to have a meaningful,
and I meant to call it more like committee or working group or something, and maybe just having a meeting where we focus on it, and whatever it can be launched from that. And I did want to also, Robert brought up the May Water Safety Month, and tenants with in-water activities are always brought together for a meeting that Hudson River Park Trust holds to talk about that. And maybe what we can do is talk about it in a lead up to that. Like, maybe there's people from outside that direct community that have ideas for things that should be discussed.
So, for instance, I'm just going to comment that there will be discussions about safety continuing with Gansevoort as an open to the public way to launch your boat. I'm sure there'll be things coming up, even though there's lots of signage. It still will be tested in the spring for sure. Tracy?
Yes, thank you. I just wondered, Mary, do you envision a maritime committee also working on conservation issues, water quality, or is it mostly the thinking that it would be focused on activities and safety?
It came up really separately. It only was tied to safety with the Gansevoort rules, and then I think Dan was kind of hesitating about creating a whole separate group, which I totally understand. I think the things that have come up, some of them have touched on safety. Like Dan had brought up in the executive committee about the tidal pools at Gansevoort and people waiting there and maybe slipping and falling down. But you know, since I operate a historic ship, and some of this discussion followed up on the webinar about the SS United States coming to the Hudson River, and did that make sense? And people who actually have experience with ships will have a different perspective on that than people who don't. And so it just raised the question if we need to have some focus on that and what shape it should take, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a strong feeling.
Yeah, if you look at your screen, it's just these wonderful tidal pools. And the question is, not sure people know what they are. And it's not a soft landing if you slip. So, you know, the trust is working on it. It's not complete. I mean, this is completed, but in terms of safety, there's still discussions.
Yeah, on these are one of our educational tools. We'll certainly, there are some rocks and bricks and stuff that have gotten them, and we are looking at adding some additional signage for it. It is, you know, designed to have an uneven bottom, because that's what we can get the crusting organisms to do it. We've seen some mud crabs in there. We've seen blue crabs already actually in there. Our team, the algae and the other pieces are sort of the first wave. Our science team is expecting that over the course of time, we'll start seeing other things, barnacles, followed by mussels, and hopefully oysters down the road. And this is one of those areas where we can bring school groups and help people really understand sort of what these pieces are. And the smooth bottoms on these don't work, but we are going to try to add some signage to be very clear about what it is. I do a little bit feel like we are teaching New Yorkers one person at a time that wet rocks can be slippery, but we are adding some additional signage to be ever clearer to the additional signage that is already there in bright orange about that.
Yeah, I would do a stay out or something like that too, because I think people will on hot summer days be waiting.
On this one, I think definitely we are. I think that's one of the pieces that we are looking at, is to be clear that folks should not be in it. It is not quite a habitat feature, but is one of our educational science areas where we are hoping to have sort of the robust river life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say post occupancy evaluation can be quite jarring like that. Very, very important to look at projects after they're designed and see how they function. I just want to make a pitch for, if you look behind me, 73% of the park is water. And the Hudson River Park does a great job with environmental education. But there's environmental education and navigation and safety and historic preservation and water quality and the pollution. There's a lot of issues that relate to the maritime environment. I see the maritime environment as the above water, those of us who are enjoying it, and everything below the water is the folks that are dependent on it, from the fishes to us. So that's what I was thinking, that with the park being so large of water, we have really great expertise of people that probably doesn't look at this asset the way it could be looked at in a maritime committee. Might be helpful, not looking at creating an encumbrance, but looking at creating something of value.
Thank you, Tom. We have Tammy and then Graham.
So what I wanted to say was, I think at the rate to respect people's volunteer time, we could have the conversation of maritime and safety being one committee, because we are mostly water, but safety for the park is safety for the park. And it doesn't make a difference whether we're talking water safety or land safety. That's like encompassing everything. I don't think it would be encroachment. I think that if you're looking to meet more monthly, you could have one be the safety and one be a maritime, and kind of go back and forth, so you can maximize the bandwidth of the people who are here. I would hate to schedule another meeting, even if it is a completely different, and just always have to be chasing it around for people who would want to be on both. But that's always mine because I spend way too much time on this.
Thank you for all the volunteering, Tammy. Your expertise and is well
It's just about
acknowledged.
making sure that there's enough bandwidth that people have. I mean, you want to respect, the weather gets nice. We want people not here. We want them in the park.
Yeah. Graham?
I just want to, I get often asked about safety, and people ask me about safety at the downtown boathouse, and I tell them the most dangerous thing about going kayaking to downtown boathouse is walking across the West Side Highway. And I feel that is the case. So I don't want the water to be perceived as this incredibly much more dangerous place than the land. Humans have been using the water for, we think, 500,000 years. It's one reason why we have big brains, right? If you actually look at the young children up at Gainesville Peninsula, you see the 3-year-olds or the 4-year-olds on a nice day. They are on that boat ramp, usually with their shoes off, doing what children have done for hundreds of thousands of years, wading in that water, right? This is just natural. So I would like on a nice summer day to see 10,000 people kayaking in Hudson River Park. And I think that would be a safety improvement, right? Of course, the park is not designed for it. Well, that's not my fault, right? So we have to put safety in the context of public health, right? That we're in a city where, life expectancy has declined in recent years significantly for lots of reasons. And the park is a way to reverse that process. And so is the water, right? So I don't want personal safety to be compromising public health. Just saying.
Good points. And Robert wrote a note in the chat. I would also note that HRPT has a technical, what's it called? TAC, what does it stand for?
Technical Advisory Committee.
Yes.
They work on our science pieces. It's a lot of experts, very specific expertise on it.
Yeah, Rob Perani is on that.
Yeah.
And he's on the advisory council as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he mentioned, he's the one who mentioned it, Tom. I would also say that I think the people who were talking about, should we band together and to talk about maritime issues were people who have been vessel operators like Tom with New York Water Taxi, Rob Buchanan with the boats that he's involved in, the human powered boats, myself with historic ships. So it's definitely different than the environmental issues. And I think the park is well staffed with experts in that area. I think it was more like, can we bring our expertise to bear in some way that's helpful?
Great. We're running a little bit out of time. I did post the New York City Blue Highway RFEI just for folks to read it, just to be aware of it. We're not going to be discussing it. I'm sorry, Michael, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Dan, I'm sorry, real quick. This is not a fully formed thought, but listening to Tom and all this energy around thinking about maritime stuff, I am feeling that we should maybe reconsider whether or not the safety committee is something we should get rid of and replace it with a new focus. Maybe about experience. Maybe just about like experiencing the park, because safety is a priority, and I like talking about it on the full council. And the stuff that Tom talks about and that Mary talks about, I think we need to, there's a space for that. And I think that, we should dedicate some real energy to that, specifically. And if we want to talk about safety and maritime stuff, that's just a conversation. I don't think it matters, where that lands. But I think the best place for it really would be to talk about safety in the full group. So I think I might be propose that we eliminate that committee and reframe. But I'm just in the middle of thinking about it right now.
Would you,
Maybe something we can talk about next time we get
yeah,
together.
we might have an executive committee meeting in December. I don't think we're going to have a meeting in December, but maybe I'll invite you to that and we could talk about how we reshape like a working group that.
For instance, the park, Hudson River Park
2024.
does focus so
Yeah.
much on education, but I don't think we have an education committee specifically. So
Right.
maybe that's something we should, if our work is about supporting the park, then maybe we should be focused on the things they do the most. In any case, thank you. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, so we are out of time. I just wanted to note also that actually Mary mentioned it before. There's a 900-foot boat that you might have read about in the New York Times that is leaving Philadelphia, and it can only dock in Manhattan, they say. And I think by and large, it's not going to work out for many of the experts on the West Side, at least to dock here, because it would overwhelm anything that were at docks. So I don't
This
know.
is their
Robert,
third time in 20 years.
So if you read about it, it's not going on to Pier 76. It's 3 times bigger than Pier 76 or longer. We just wanted to mention it that no, it's not getting a lot of support. If there's anybody here that wants to have support for it, you could raise your hand and explain why. Seeing no hands. Robert, do you have anything to say? Or Mary, it seems like you want to say something.
Well, I just got a follow-up because I'm on their mailing list and they did record the webinar. I'm trying to find the link, but if anyone wants the link to that, I can share it.
It was very well done.
Afterwards. It was very professionable and very knowledgeable. Like they answered every question pretty much that I had, except for the reality of availability of other places too.
We do not have a pier that can accommodate a ship that is larger than the Intrepid at the moment. Just for the sense of it, like that it does not exist. Not that it couldn't exist at some point in the future, but the proposed uses, the boatel use is also currently prohibited under the Hudson River Park Act. The weak pier deck, we don't let any ships tie up to 76, even small little whalers, the NYPD boats, because of the weak pier deck connections. So we do not have ability to accommodate it. I know they are losing their lease in Philadelphia, but I'm not sure Philadelphia's piers redevelopment or their lease issues drive the conversation here for park planning.
And their site in Philadelphia is 150 feet shorter than the ship, so it's not going to go on the Delaware River at Penn Landing either.
Yes, so I just put a link in the chat. It's actually to a rebroadcast on the 18th. So it's not like you can just click and watch the recording. You can register to watch a rebroadcast.
Sounds like a great thing for Staten Island.
Yes.
Along with the ferry that Yost and David.
I don't think I could go back and repair, and I'm hearing that the Hidels may just be taking over.
Is there any other new business that folks would like to discuss tonight? Well, I think, what Tammy, myself, and Jeffrey are supposed to do is come up with a venue where it's kind of informal. We all get together and not necessarily have agenda items, but just see face to face. But we have to work on that, and that will be something that hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll figure out so that people can just get together for an hour or so.
I know some lovely spots in this beautiful park on the west side.
Yeah, a little nippy though.
A little nippy and a little noisy. That's all I'm going to say.
I know. I mean, December is it's a busy month for everybody, so we'll try to figure it out soon. Can I have a motion to conclude the meeting? Yes, 1 second. Yep, Tom, second. All right. Well, thank you all. Have a great Thanksgiving and looking forward to seeing you in person in December. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dan.